All right, so for tonight's homework, you need to take some notes over this little mini lecture that I'm going to give you about hooks, how to write hooks for your essay or future essays. So in your Hobbs journal, if you don't have that out, go ahead and pause the video and go get it. In your Hobbs journal, you need to put hooks notes, and you're just going to have to make a couple little notes about how to write a hook. I'm going to give you 4 pointers or different methods that you can use when you're trying to write a hook. So you need to write those down as I go. The link to this Prezi is also on Canvas. If you want to click through at your own pace, that's fine. But it's always good to sort of have some guidance from me, which is why I'm making this video for you. So the first thing you're going to write is this theme on the next slide. Failure is a more valuable experience than success. So the hooks that I'm going to give you are an example of an analysis paragraph or analysis hook, a hook used in an analysis paragraph over a short story that the theme is failure is a more valuable experience than success. So you're going to be, if you were writing this paragraph, you're going to be focusing on that theme and discussing how that is seen and proven throughout this short story, this hypothetical short story that we're going to be talking about. So hopefully you wrote that theme down. If not, go back, write it down so you can refer to it as I'm talking about these different tips. So tip number 1, use an analogy or a metaphor. Now this is a really long hook, so this one's a little more challenging and you don't want to go too far with these analogies, but try to find an analogy that fits. You want to give a little background on what it means. So this writer's talking about forest fires being these destructive forces. The flames devour all these trees, and animals have to leave their homes. But then the writer shifts to discussing how from this forest fire good can still come, because nutrients are cycled back into the soil, new animals find new homes. So from this kind of destruction, new life can be born. So this is the analogy of a forest fire, and then the writer's going to go into discussing the actual short story. So in this hypothetical short story, the hypothetical author reveals the surprising truth that nature knows but man forgets. Success often begins with the ashes of failure. So this is a pretty strong hook that I obviously don't expect you to be at this level yet, but you should try to kind of model your writing after this if you want to use an analogy or a metaphor. All right, so the next one is find a famous quote. Now, this is one of those things that I mentioned in class where future teachers may not want you to use a quote for your hook, but I actually love using quotes for hooks. I think that it's one of the easiest ways to teach writing hooks because there's so many good quotes out there. So if you were going to use a quote and you're discussing how failure is more valuable than success, you would Google quotes about failure, famous quotes about failure, or whatever, and try to find one that fits what you're trying to say. So this person found a quote by Walter Brunel that says, failure is the tuition you pay for success, meaning if you want to be successful, you're going to have to experience some failures first. So good can come out of those failures. Then the writer leads into talking about, yes, like he's agreeing with the quote that the reader can find truthfulness in this statement illustrated in the short story, this hypothetical short story that we're talking about. So that's an easier way to write a hook, is just finding a quote and saying, you have to give credit to whoever said it, and then lead into your discussion and analysis of the short story. All right, so number 3 is turn a cliche on its head. So we've talked about cliches and trying to avoid them, but in this case, you don't really necessarily need to avoid the cliche. Use the cliche to your advantage by flipping it around and changing the meaning. So the cliche here would be the sweet smell of success is our cliche. Instead, this author is saying, embrace the sweet smell of failure. And then the author is going to go on to discuss that this surprising truth is argued in this hypothetical short story. All right, last is use some sort of shocking statement. So losing the big game, failing a tough class, having a broken heart, those are all really negative things that you would associate with something negative, that would be a bad thing to happen to a person, but you're going to try to make this into a shocking statement by saying could be the best thing that could ever happen to you. Then you lead into your short story and how this is represented in the short story, how this theme of failure being a valuable experience is portrayed in the short story. So those are your 4 tips for writing hooks. The one thing that you definitely don't want to do is asking a question. Again, this is one of those things that other lit teachers might argue that it's okay to do. I disagree. I do not like questions in essays. From this point forward in my class, don't ever ask a question in an essay, because to me it's informal and it doesn't make you a strong writer or a strong narrator. It makes me feel like you don't know what you're saying and you're not confident in your writing or in your statements. So a lot of us try to avoid teaching you guys to ask questions in your essays. So always avoid that in my class. In the future, if you have another teacher, don't say, hey, but Miss Hobbs said we can't ever say a question. Some teachers will let you ask questions. It kind of just depends on who your audience is. So always remember, you're writing for an audience. In this case, you're writing for me. I'm your audience, and I don't like for you to ask questions. So don't do that. If hopefully you were taking notes during this, you need to make sure you have all the 4 do's and then the 1 don't. Which is don't ask a question, and then you're going to go forward and practice writing your own hook using that sample analysis intro paragraph that I gave you. So look at that writer's hook and what she did, and then take that example and this lecture and try to write your own hook for thank you, ma'am. Good luck.